joke about anything anymore, comes the chorus from people desperately needing to believe they live in a world where you can say anything you like to anybody and be magically immune from, what's the word again? Consequences of your actions. It's a comedian's job to make fun of people and make us laugh, and either all jokes are allowed or none of them can be, they say. This is censorship, they say. You can't joke about anything because the woke mob are offended by everything. Some of you may even labour under the fallacy that this is some kind of new phenomenon invented when the word woke was. Well, it isn't. Self-proclaimed edgy comedians have been whining about this for decades, desperately playing the victim of comedy oppression so they can pull the spotlight back on themselves for a few more minutes and stay in the limelights where the money comes from. And people who aren't professional comedians have forever used the "it's just a joke" as a think-free way to avoid accountability for the things they do and say to other people, or at the very least to avoid even a minute of self-reflection or to entertain the notion that empathy is a worthwhile human trait. It has never been true. It still isn't true. You can joke about whatever the hell you like in the right time and place. I personally love me some edgy comedians. Lewis Black, Bill Burr, Sarah Silverman, Tom Segura, Richard Pryor, Bill Hicks, George Carlin, Jimmy Carr. And I fully believe you can joke about whatever you like if it's situationally appropriate, and by that I mean right place, right time, right audience. That's the key to this all. All of the incredible successful comedians I've just named, at least to some extent, have challenged their audience to laugh at some pretty dark and uncomfortable stuff. Disease, death, sexual assault, murder, racism, sexism, homophobia, killing cops. Some of it holds up by today's social and moral standards as funny, some of it doesn't. And that's fine. It's unreasonable to look backwards in time like 3 decades and hold accountable these comedians, and spit at them now for once people once thought was okay to laugh at a comedy show or even a late night talk show, but isn't by today's standards. There's a time and place for some of those jokes. The time was 30 years ago, and the place was a dedicated comedy venue where people went into it expecting to hear that style of joke. It is not a comedian's job, as so many have claimed over the last 24 hours and at every other incident where a comedian has been brought to account for a joke. At least some have considered anything from bad taste to outright inappropriate or even offensive. It's a comedian's job to make people laugh. Some comedians do that by targeting others, some do it by centering on their own lives, some do it with wordplay and stories, some do it with simple rapid-fire set-up and punchline jokes. But getting a laugh by any means, no matter who the target is, now there's a discussion worth happening. What can you joke about and when? A few of the comments left on my last video directly about the Will Smith and Chris Rock incident have boiled down to either the comedian's job argument or, more specifically, the "if you don't want to be made fun of, don't leave the house" kind of stuff. In this context, it is in reference to Jada Pinkett Smith, whose medical condition, an autoimmune disease that causes her immune system to incorrectly attack some of her hair follicles and which leads to patches of her hair falling out. Well, Jada shaved her head and chose not to wear a wig or otherwise hide her baldness, her medical condition, in an ongoing effort to destigmatize what is, especially for women, a physical symptom of a disease that can be extremely distressing and devastating to self-confidence, especially for women who work in public-facing jobs like, for example, the entertainment industry. So, for the argument of "if you don't want to be made fun of, stay home," it's a pretty vile and frankly sociopathic response, in my opinion. Telling someone with a medical condition, a disability, a birth defect, amputation, speech impediment, or any other cosmetic or congenital abnormality to stay home and stay out of sight unless they're fully willing to be mocked and ridiculed and verbally abused and emotionally assaulted? Whew. Holy crap, man. There's a guy back in 1938's Germany who you might get along pretty great with. A bunch of his mates are on their way to Austria and they'll put you in touch. Just give him a wave. There's a little adage that I love and always have loved since I first heard it as a kid. Explaining a joke is like dissecting a live frog. Nobody involved enjoys it, and the subject won't survive the experience. So let's explain Chris Rock's hilarious joke at Jada's expense. See, as I've explained already, Jada Pinkett Smith is bald, having shaved her head in response to the unpleasant patches of baldness her autoimmune disease causes. Fully 1/4 of a century ago, way back in 1997, there was a movie called G.I. Jane. It was about a female lieutenant trying to earn her place amongst the elite soldiers in the Special Operations Force called the Navy SEALs. Said lieutenant shaves down her head at one point in the movie to what's called an induction cut in the military terms, the shortest possible haircut that isn't literally bald. She does this as part of compliance to military expectations, and I suppose to help perhaps defeminize her a bit in the eyes of the sexist rooting against her and hoping for her to fail, in the hopes that they see her more of a fellow soldier instead of a girly girl with long locks of hair, because, as we all know, one of the defining traits of being a woman is having long hair. Gender is a social construct. See, and then what Chris did is, as a 57-year-old boomer, he remembered this movie from 25 years ago, and because Jada also had a shaved down head, made the hilarious joke that she did it to star in a sequel of that movie, instead of in response to a disease that she's been trying to destigmatize for a few years now. You know, because women with shaved heads and short hair are targets for ridicule, because you see, women are supposed to have long hair, and anytime you see a woman without long hair, that means she's not sort of womanly enough for those standards, and if a woman doesn't comply with that beauty expectation in public, no less, well, that's like catnip to a comedian with a whole lot of misogynist reflexes still in his little bags of hilarious jokes and quips at the expense of the cosmetic appearance of women. Obviously, it's because she took a role in a movie about a woman stepping into a traditionally masculine job. That's the only possible excuse she could have for shaving down her head like that. See, even if Chris Rock didn't somehow know about Jada's medical issue, which I doubt, because even I knew about it before this incident, and I have made zero effort to keep up with celebrity lives at all. I hate celebrity gossip, and Chris lives inside that world, so for him not to know about it, I don't buy it. But even if he didn't know about all that, it's still a shitty joke made at the expense of a woman's physical appearance at an event held by the most image-obsessed industry in the entire world to a worldwide audience and in a theatre full of her friends and family and peers. It's still really cruel. I've also been hearing a lot of talk about what Will Smith's reaction to this, slapping the bitch off his face, was teaching our kids, and they're right, immediate physical violence was not the correct reaction to this. I absolutely understand Will's urge to do it, and sometimes any of us can have lapses in judgment and impulse control. It still wasn't the right thing to do, it wasn't the right message to send. I think we all agree on that. However, Chris's message of mockery and derision at a woman's appearance, not conforming to traditional or expected feminine norms, what was that teaching our kids? That was teaching our kids something too. What is Chris Rock teaching our kids about how to treat women when they don't conform to social expectations of femininity? Is that problematic at all? Should Chris Rock be held accountable for that? Oh, I don't know. It's a mystery. But, you know, some dude slapped another dude on the face, so that's a bigger deal. We need to deal with that, and it's all Will Smith's fault. And Chris Rock is an angel, a comedy genius who is untouchable. Yeah, Chris Rock. Stellar example to our kids about how to treat women and who it's okay to make jokes of in public. So like I said in the opening, there's a time and there's a place for pretty much any kind of joke. And this was neither the time nor the place for that kind of joke. I was 16 years old in 1994, 3 years before G.I. Jane would hit the theatres, and Kurt Cobain, lead man of a band called Nirvana, you might have heard of them, commercial flagship of the musical genre called grunge out of Seattle, and what some recognised as the iconic sound of Generation X as a whole. But in that year, Kurt Cobain crammed a loaded shotgun in his face and pulled the trigger, kind of cutting short his musical career a bit. That was the first time many of my peers had any experience like it. Someone we respected as an artist, someone whose songs and lyrics reflected our sense of disaffected existences, someone we felt a connection with, gone by his own hand for reasons many of us couldn't fathom. Why? He had wealth, he had fame, he got to do what he loved, and the whole world rewarded him for it, and loved him for it, and praised him for it. What could possibly In any case, it's a well understood psychological phenomenon that joking about difficult crap helps us process it. It's why we have things like dead baby jokes, despite that being one of the most horrific and devastating things a person could possibly experience in their lives. So as you may imagine, there were Kurt Cobain jokes when I was a kid. One I remember most was, what's the last thing that went through Kurt Cobain's mind? A bullet. I remember that joke in particular mainly because my as yet undiagnosed autism brain back then would not and could not resist the overwhelming urge to correct the joke, as shotguns obviously don't fire bullets, but pellets or shot, sometimes slugs. But they were still getting it wrong. Anyway, it was okay to tell that joke in our peer groups. Well, okay-ish, anyway. I mean, jokes about offing yourself in a group of teenage boys is problematic on its own, seeing as males, especially young males, are far more likely to have success in an attempt to unalive one's self. And joking about such things as a coping mechanism also comes hand in hand with joking about things of just making them not seem like serious things you should perhaps talk to someone about. But we joked about Kurt as a way of dealing, and while dark as it was, if not appropriate, it was at least acceptable. What would not be acceptable would be telling that exact same joke to Dave Grohl, for example, Kurt's friend and once drummer for Nirvana. If I told that joke to Dave, or even to a room full of people with Dave sitting in front row, I doubt anyone with even the smallest ability for empathy would think that would be appropriate. And if in a flood of reactionary emotion Dave came up to me and slugged me in my gut, I'd have to take it as earned. I would have deserved it, in even my opinion. Even if you think reactionary violence is wrong, I was the instigator. I would have known better. I should have known better. And just because Dave would be technically morally wrong for belting me in response to it, that in no way excuses what I did to earn that reaction. It doesn't make me the victim. It doesn't make me the better man for not hitting him back if that happened. Is that the same thing as what Will Smith slapping the bitch off Chris Rock's face for mocking his wife's medical condition is? But not quite. But it lives in the same house, a house that lives on a street called empathy. One of the things I see most obviously missing from a lot of the reactions to Will and Jada's reactions to what Chris said is empathy. Seeing and knowing and understanding and feeling what someone else feels when they're being attacked. And something many people have pointed out is, in the footage of the incident, when Chris Rock tells the joke, Will Smith is actually laughing. He might still be laughing at the rolling chain of jokes that have been told, but as soon as Will saw his wife and how she was reacting to it, and you see her in the footage as well, her face fell in pain and disappointment and dejection, and, you know, as soon as Will saw that, he would have had an empathic reaction. He goes, oh, holy shit, I just got what that joke was about. Look how much it's hurting my wife. I'm going to have an emotional reaction right now. And the rest of the story unfolds. Wha-pow! And Will Smith having that empathic reaction to her pain is something I felt, and I don't even know her. I don't like Jada Pinkett Smith from what little I know about her, you know, as a person, and absolutely from her work. I think she's kind of a really bad actor, and I don't enjoy her in pretty much anything she's ever been in, especially Gotham, when she basically ruined every scene she was in. And I've spent a lot of time laughing at Chris Rock's comedy, and given the choice, I'd rather spend an evening in a room with him than her, but I have way more empathy for her than I do for Captain Slappy Face over there because of this incident. And if you don't feel that empathy, I really do feel pity for you. Because if you are without the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to feel what they're feeling, to think about how something that someone has said or what you've said to them has made them feel and how it would make you feel in their place, basic, simple empathy stuff, if you can't understand that, if you can't see Will Smith's point of view from this, whether or not, again, you agree with physical violence being a first reaction as appropriate, which I think we can all agree almost never is appropriate, if you can't empathize with what happened here, then I really do feel pity for you from my own empathy, because I can't imagine going through life living like that, being unable to empathize with anybody. None of us are perfect. Will certainly isn't perfect, and he had a moment of weakness. He reacted emotionally. He reacted violently. I'm sure he regrets that decision, but I still have more sympathy for his side of the table and Jada's side of the fence than I do for Chris Rock telling that joke. Again, whether or not he was even aware of the specific circumstances of her medical condition, it was still a shitty joke to tell, especially in that situation, to that audience at that time, in the way he told it. So there you go. Yesterday's video was sort of an off-the-cuff ramble, just reacting to what happened. Today's video was somewhat more scripted and organized. I wanted to talk about something more specific. Hopefully I've driven my point home. If I have, and it's made sense to you, one way or the other, whether or not you agree with it, I suppose, hopefully you've, along the way, given a comment and the thumb and the bell and the sub and all that sort of stuff. And thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there. I am Blunty. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I will catch you next time.